Welcome on in. It's another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast presented by Whelen Engineering. On the road, in the air, and around the world, Whelen is trusted to be seen, trusted to be heard, and trusted to perform. Welcome inside the Concord, North Carolina studios here at MRN headquarters. Pit Road reporter Chris Wilner for the Motor Racing Network with me as always, announcer Kyle Rickey out at Stafford Speedway. Kyle, this is a big week in racing. It's arguably the biggest in motorsports each and every year. Memorial Day weekend coming up at the tail end of this week, and we've got a lot to talk about, whether it's the stuff that's going on in the short track world. Obviously, it's a big week here in Charlotte with 600 weekend, and of course, the Indianapolis 500 going on, and tons of other stuff in motorsports. But I'm excited I get to see you this week. You get to come down to Charlotte here in NASCAR's backyard and work the broadcast with me this weekend for the ARCA Menard Series and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series on Friday night. Looking forward to having you in town, my friend.
Yeah, it's been over, I think 5 years or 6 years since I've been to the Charlotte Motor Speedway for an event. And when I was located in Concord, North Carolina, lived right across the street, and for the better part of a decade, never missed an event there, whether it be on the dirt track, the drag strip, or obviously the oval, all nights of the week. So it's going to be fun to head back to the old homestead, I guess you could call it. And look forward to a doubleheader of racing on Friday night with the ARCA Menard Series and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series here on MRN.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. We'll dive into that here in just a little bit. But we got a good show for you coming up. Tons to talk about. Like I mentioned, some drama at Hickory. We'll recap the NASCAR Pinty Series doubleheader. Well, I guess back-to-back weekends, and it was the same winner. So we've had a double up on the Pinty Series schedule. We'll talk about that. ARCA East is now in the rear view, but we're also talking ARCA Menard Series at Charlotte. As we mentioned, Billy Venturini joins us on the show. Traded in the owner hat for a helmet last week at Flat Rock and did a good job with a fourth-place finish. We'll talk about that and the coming weekend here at Charlotte. But Kyle, let's start off with the NASCAR Pinty Series. Trayton Lapcevich, I don't think coming into this year I had him sweeping the first two races, both on an oval at Sunset and then now at CTMP in Mossport. What do you think of that? His start of his season, cementing himself as a championship favorite here with two races in.
Yeah, not only a contender, but a favorite, and both fairly dramatic finishes. What we saw at Sunset just a week ago to open the season, and then that final left, right, left, or was it, right, left, right combination of corners at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. They seem to never disappoint. When we went there with the trucks years ago, I feel like there was always contact, and the final pass to the lead happened at that section of the track on the final lap. We saw it again between Trayton and Marc-Antoine Cameron on the final lap of this past weekend's race there. Back and forth battle right to the checkered flag, and it was Trayton Lapcevich coming out on top. So not only does he have a good race car, but he also has the race sense behind the wheel to run for a championship. A strong car, aggressive when needed behind the wheel, and that's the perfect combination for that series that continues to put on fantastic shows. I'm not sure what it is about those race cars. I was thinking about this earlier today. No matter where the Pinty Series goes, whether it be ovals, short ovals, big ovals, road courses, street courses, they put on a great race, and they didn't let us down this past weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun to watch. Another thriller for the NASCAR Pinty Series. What a great start to 2023 for our friends north of the border. All right, let's move on to the modifieds. Kyle, we had another weekend of racing with the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour up at Riverhead, and it was Justin Bonsignor, his 10th career win at the racetrack. The multi-time series champion gets in the win column. We had him on the show, so I like to think it's a little bit of luck from the MRN crew here on Coast to Coast, sending up his way. But let's talk about that race. Again, 10th career victory at Riverhead. He had to beat Ron Silk, and we talked about the other list of drivers that are good there, like Doug Coby, but it seemed like that car was just working the best out of the rest of the group for most of the weekend.
I mean, he grew up there for Justin. I think he won his first ever tour race there many years ago. He's picked up 9 more since, including last Saturday, or I guess Sunday afternoon. The race was delayed because of weather. Had to fend off a couple of champions behind him, and Ron Silk, John McKennedy were the podium finishers, all championship caliber drivers in the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour. I guess the big story of the day, probably Doug Coby, qualified at the back, made some, I guess you could call it, unapproved adjustments to that team, the Tommy Baldwin team. They started the race 2 laps down. They were held on the backstretch. until the race leader completed the second circuit. So a full 2 laps down, and Doug never really was able to make those laps up with the way the caution flags fell, not being eligible for the lucky dog during the first yellow. In fact, I'm not even sure if he was eligible for the entire race. A weird penalty that I've never seen before. Usually just start at the back of the field, but it's up to the discretion of the series director. And he was placed 2 laps down for the start of the event and never really recovered. I believe he finished 19th in the final order.
Yeah, hard to rebound for sure at a place like Riverhead as well when you're just constantly in traffic. But we talk about points in the championship. Ron Silk just one behind Justin Bonsignor, so already a tight battle at the front just a few races into the season. And you talk about Matt Hirschman. Where's Matt? Well, he's coming back this week at Lee, so Lee USA Speedway. So this grueling stretch of the schedule, Kyle, it's got to be taking a toll on some of these teams just going back to back to back. But at the same time, I think we're getting some good races out of it and a good championship battle as well.
Yeah, and they're all bull ring racetracks. We saw that a couple weeks ago at Monadnock Speedway, a tight quarter mile oval. Riverhead, a tight quarter mile. Lee, a little bit bigger, but not much. And then we go to the Seekonk Speedway the second week in June, another tight quarter mile. So tight racetracks, a little bit of traveling for some of the teams, especially the teams based in New York, going up to Lee, New Hampshire this weekend, and a couple of weeks' time at Seekonk, but still within the region, a couple of hours for everybody. So, yeah, it's a bit of a grind, but they'll have a little bit of a break after this stretch before gearing up for New Hampshire Motor Speedway in July.
Well, we'll see if Matt Hirschman can stink up the show, led a race high 100 laps last year. Again, Doug Kobe looking for a rebound. That is the Granite City Derby at Lee USA Speedway coming up on Saturday. All right, before we get to Billy Venturini, who's standing by on the flip side of the break, we do need to talk about the ARCA East Series at Flat Rock, and it was William Sawalich winning his second win of the season here in 2023. Just absolutely mastered that racetrack in the Dutch Boy 150. Sean Hingerini, though, probably the dominant car all day, just kind of faded there at the end when William laid the bumper. Now, Sean wasn't too pleased with it. I'm curious what your reaction was on the old bump and run there with 48 to go.
You got to do what you got to do. I mean, it's short track racing, and it's a very tight racetrack, a track that a lot of the drivers have never seen before. The first time the ARCA Menards East ever raced there, the first time an ARCA sanctioned event has been held there since 2000. Very tight, not a lot of opportunity to make a pass, so he did what he had to do, and I saw no fault with it. William was able to make the pass, use the bumper, only lead change of the event with 48 laps to go to pick up the race win. Sean had a dominant car, recovered to finish in position number 3. So I thought it was good. It was a good race. 15, 16 cars took the green. They were always seemingly in traffic because there were a lot of long green flag runs. Just 3 caution flags slowed the event. So another good event for the ARCA Menards East Series.
Yeah, a calculated move for sure. Congratulations to William, and a shout out to LeVar Scott, rallied to a second place finish. Looked really strong over the weekend, was able to get by Sean there in the closing laps to take over position number 2, and another Rev Racing stable driver on the rise here in the early part of the season. Had a good run. We talked about Daytona. We actually had him on the show there earlier this year as well. And of course, Billy Venturini, who's standing by, finished 4th in his first return to the cockpit in 17 years. So without further ado, let's take a quick break and talk to Billy about that 4th place run and all things ARCA Menards Series coming up next on the flip side of the break here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Whelen Engineering. As promised, joining us via Zoom, Billy Venturini traded the owner's hat for the steering wheel here this past weekend at Flat Rock. Let's start there. I know you're a busy guy as we get set for Charlotte this weekend, but let's go back to last weekend. What was it like just getting back behind the wheel? I know A lot of people were excited to see you strap back in. What, 17 years since your last race? But I know it was at a track that means a lot to you. So, what was it like last weekend, just being a competitor for once?
Well, it's been so long. It was a little surreal. Like I didn't know we tested on Wednesday, and I got to be honest, it felt foreign. It had been so long, it didn't even feel like I was like I had to get used to it. Now it's funny because I left that test and I was like, I'm really rusty, and the guys in the shop were like, "Oh my god, you were really good." So I think our expectations were slightly different because most of those guys never even seen me race. Um, I think they thought I was going to completely suck, and I only partially sucked. So I think it was. But I had said when I left there, I was like, I'm gonna go test, and if I could be within 3/10, I'll probably go back and be within 1500ths when I show up on Saturday. Well, I was 2/10 off, and then we qualified a 10th off the pole. So I did cut that in half. We just were actually, I gotta be honest, I exceeded just a little because I thought I'd qualify a little worse, but I was pleased with that, and then everything went well.
The race itself, only 3 cautions, one fairly early on lap 4, a lot of long green flag runs. Were you ready for that?
Yeah, actually, fitness wise, I was good.
Okay.
We're kind of a fitness family because we have
Yep.
to be. I come from a long line of fat people, so we kind of got to work out really hard. So diet, workout. I mean, it's kind of funny. Our whole family, both my kids, my wife, we're all like weighing our food before we eat it. We all count macros. It's such a pain in the butt, but it's kind of what you got to do to have a healthy lifestyle. So no, I was actually ready. I fitness wise, I went 150 total laps. I really believe I could have run 150 more. I also never have driven a race in my life with a cool box. Wow, talk about something that's nice to have.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. But let's go back, but real quick about what sparked this idea. I mean, obviously, you're running the team, and you guys got your hands full, right? You've got your stable of drivers, and you've got cars moving around from series to series. But what was the initial spark that was like, you know what, I need to give this a go again?
Well, it was always kind of like my thing I wanted to do was run Flat Rock, and Dad won his first race there in '83, so I'd been like 7 at the time, and he won 3 races total there, and just grew up watching that place. I always thought it was the coolest racetrack to watch at. All my heroes growing up raced there, being like Dave Weltmeyer and Bob Strait and Grant Adcox, and of course my dad. So it was just, and they took it off the series the year before I started running ARCA full time. So it just didn't work out. I never got to race there. And when I got all done with my career, it was like the one thing I regretted. Of course, we all wanted to be race car drivers, but things worked out well for me out of the seat. So I'm really pleased with the way things all kind of organically happened. But I kind of regretted never getting to race there. So when it popped up as a possibility with Ron Drager the year before, because we talked about it. Honestly, we've talked about this since May, Kansas last year. He told me he was thinking about putting Flat Rock on the schedule, and I told him I would run. And I think he kept doing barometer checks to make sure I wasn't kind of fibbing just a little bit. And I kept telling him every time, I'm like, nope, I'm in. And then in March this year, before he was like, well, I would like to do a press release. Are you really going to do it? And I'm like, 100%, I'm doing it. So I knew last year at May, if he put it on the schedule, that was going to be the one thing that would get me back in the seat.
The last ARCA race there prior to this weekend, or the last ARCA sanctioned race there was in 2000, this being, of course, the first East race held at that racetrack. Were there any memories pulling into the place from your time there as a spectator, as a child, all those years ago?
It's funny, I almost had to relearn what the place looked like. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember the tree. I remember all that stuff. Like I remember the actual racetrack, but all the stuff around it, I'm like, as soon as I got in there, it all came right back. And I remember being there Saturday nights with Dad for ARCA races, because we raced there usually twice a year, all through the early parts of his career. That's really that's the home of ARCA. That's the first ARCA track. Toledo now is, but Toledo came on in the, I want to say early 90s when Ron bought that. Flat Rock goes back into the 50s with his grandfather, and then Ron pretty much purchased a good portion of it in the early 80s. That's what I talked to him about that when we were there. He was 22 years old when he decided to purchase part of it. So talk about a bold move on his part.
I know you pay attention to the sport, and you've been involved in the sport for so long, and watched this ARCA Menard series and ARCA East series kind of grow and evolve over the last 10, 20 years. But as a driver now, being behind the wheel, what surprised you the most about the racing now that you were, got a firsthand experience versus being on the pit box every week?
Okay, well, there was a lot actually. I was terrible on restarts, but that's probably because it's been a long time. I thought the kids all had really nice car control. They're fast. I got to race. I got to race with all the good ones. I mean, I raced with every single good kid in the series, which was nice because one time or another I was either alongside them or right behind them or in front of them. So that was awesome. I got to do that. I literally got to see the 4 really good drivers and really good cars that were there. I got to race with, and that was awesome. I think they're really lousy through traffic. I gotta be honest. You could see their age. I got through traffic better in all of them because they're driving off their hood pins. It's that rookie thing, man. Great car control, great race car, great drivers of race cars, not great race car drivers yet. They will all improve, and that's why they run the East Series and then ARCA, and that's why they eventually move Truck and Xfinity. But they lack in foresight of seeing stuff happen. Because now there was tons of stuff that didn't come back naturally. That came back on lap 1. Like my line of vision of seeing the field was clear. That never changed. I was really kind of surprised how easy that came.
You mentioned last week that it's a one-off deal. Is it still a one-off deal?
Yeah, that was the deal. I promised my wife, so yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, I was gonna say if you made the promise to the wife, you should probably uphold that. But it was still fun to see you behind the wheel, and congrats on a top 5 finish. Now let's go to the team owner hat. We've got Charlotte coming up this week. Of course, we're in NASCAR's backyard. It's a huge week of racing down here. It's the biggest weekend in general of racing and motorsports. Give us a little preview to your stable of drivers as they get set to tackle the 1.5 miles at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Of course, it's going to be a great crowd out there. Great weather, it looks like, too, hopefully, at least for Friday, which will be nice. But what can we expect out of Venturini Motorsports here this weekend?
We've got a great stable of drivers this week. Got Jesse Love again in the 20 car because he's doing that all season. He's won the last 2 races. Then I got Dean Thompson running again with us. He ran Kansas and finished 2nd. And then I got Gus Dean, who ran 2nd the race before that at Talladega. And then I have Tony Bredinger also running with us. So between the 4 of them, I do expect really good results this week.
It's been about 4 years now. Big picture question here since NASCAR became involved and acquired the ARCA Menard Series. I remember being at the press conference at the Talladega Super Speedway. I guess it was a year or so before the pandemic. How have things changed? How is NASCAR's involvement and bringing it under their umbrella made the ARCA Menard Series better these last 4 years?
Well, at first it was a really clunky merger. I'll be honest, it was rough, and it was almost a little bit of there was so much turmoil between. It was like the Bloods and the Crips, man. Like the K&N East and ARCA, we weren't friends. Like bottom line, we were not cut from the same cloth. But yet, that's all left. Like the teams, I know which teams were East teams, and I know which teams were ARCA teams. Now we're all one. Same with the officials. So 2020 was really clunky. It's probably the best way to put it. It was awkward. There seemed to be power struggles between everyone teams and inspectors. And by the time we got to about the middle of 21, it seemed like it really smoothed out. 22 went well. 23 is going very well. I think the series is run it's properly run now. I think everything's done well. I think Ron Drager is a huge key to so much of this. He's just a really balanced guy and does a good job. And everyone else has found their role, because when you merge like this, it's tricky trying to find everyone's new place. And some people didn't stay, and the people who did stay, everyone kind of changed. Everyone changed their role in some way or capacity, and it really works well right now. And I think NASCAR owning us, I think, has been great on the media side. I think it's great for flexibility we have at the racetrack. I think when we get there, they break out those Tundra dryers a lot quicker when it's the ARCA race now than back before they owned it. So I'm really glad they own us. I think that helped us. And if they didn't own us during COVID year of 2020, I'm not sure how we would have survived, because they really obviously took care of us quite well.
So we're on that upward trajectory, like you mentioned, and with NASCAR ownership. What kind of doors do you think this will open for more new racetracks to be added to the schedule? Where would you like to see the series go in the future? Obviously, you were happy to see Flat Rock was added for this year, but we just came off the heels of North Wilkesboro. Could that be an option? Where would you like to see the series maybe blaze some new paths in the next couple of years?
I'd love to go to Rockingham. That would be cool. I think that's a great racetrack. It was a great racetrack when we stopped running there, and I just was there the other day, and it's paved, and there's all kinds of pretty stuff going up around there, including soft walls and all this stuff. That racetrack's ready to go be raced at. So I think that's a great racetrack. I know Wilkesboro is near and dear to so many people's hearts, but it was kind of a dive back then. It's still kind of a dive. I'm sorry. That's unpopular opinion, but Rockingham's a nice racetrack, man. Nice racetrack.
I guess my final question still about potential schedule down the road. Is there a region of the country? I know it's a Midwest Southern series. I'm up here in New England. Obviously, we do not have the ARCA Menard series. Closest event to us is the Pocono Raceway, long-standing event down there. Also, Watkins Glen. Is there a region of the country that you'd like to go, perhaps, and explore possibility?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm doing something different with our team that we've never done. We're running the full ARCA West also.
Yep.
So that is awesome. That's actually the most fun I've ever had racing in my entire life. And I've done this forever. They have a great series out there. The officials are all super nice. The competitors, just the attitude of the whole place. What an amazing feel. If there's any way to get the main series to Irwindale, that place is legit. We went to Kern, and it's nice, but I think Irwindale's a pretty special racetrack. I think it's really balanced with lots of different grooves. It gives you everything you'd want in a racetrack. I think that place should be holding some kind of more major event.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, especially as an open wheel person. I used to go out and watch the 13-night Grand Prix with the midgets Thanksgiving weekend, and that track, no matter what's on that racetrack, produces good racing. So good point there. Before we let you go, obviously you talked about your stable of drivers this weekend at Charlotte. It's another mile and a half for the program, but specifically with Jesse Love, I mean, what's it been like to watch his progression? Obviously, he's an ARCA West champion for 2 years, or K&N West champion for 2 years, and then he comes over and runs the national schedule, and it seems like he's able to pick things up pretty quickly, obviously, whether it's a big track or the short track schedule. What do you like about him, and how fun is it to see him progress as yet the next, youngster moving up through the ranks?
Yeah, love Jesse. I've spent a lot of time with Jesse personally. He's been with us since 2020. So he ran a few races in 20, and then ran some more in 21, and then he ran everything he could in 22, and then a full schedule in 23. So he'll be in the program for 4 years. It's awesome to see him mature, and that's really the entire time he was here. It was all about 2023, because we knew what year he was going to turn 18 and run the full season, and we knew that this had to be his basically this had to be the pinnacle for him, and he's peaking at the right time, because right now he gets in the race car. He thinks he's the best race car driver at the racetrack in an ARCA race, and honestly, it's hard to argue with that, because he's honestly out driving everyone week to week. So he's doing great. I love seeing him have the success. He works hard off the track. He's a great kid. I think he'll be another one of our fleet that ends up in racing on Sunday. So I'm proud of that.
And I'll tell you what, he's fun to watch at Millbridge Speedway over here in Salisbury, North Carolina. I get to be the track announcer up there, and he can wheel a dirt micro sprint. He's able to adapt to that pretty quickly, too. So it's been fun to watch. I think that kind of helps translate to his role with the ARCA Menard series. Well, Billy, I appreciate your time, man. Best of luck to you and your drivers, your team this weekend at Charlotte. And congrats on a top 5 run there at Flat Rock. It was fun to watch.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Billy Venturini, Venturini Motorsports. On the flip side of the break, we've got a ton to talk about, news and notes from the past week, and of course, a look ahead to the races this weekend. That's all coming up next on NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Whelen Engineering.
Wheelan Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Wheelan products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Wheelan Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Wheelan Engineering. Great chat, Kyle, with Billy Venturini. And again, another stable full of drivers getting ready to tackle Charlotte Motor Speedway. It always seems like the stars come out at Charlotte, you know, when you're performing in front of NASCAR in its backyard, literally, in Concord, North Carolina. And I would assume his cars all have a shot. And they'll all be up at the front at some point, especially with the run Jesse Love has been on this season. And, of course, Gus Dean, Dean Thompson as well have had strong finishes throughout the year.
Yeah, right in the backyard of Venturini Motorsports. I mean, Charlotte Motor Speedway, I believe, is about 1.5 miles away. I mean, it's close. Obviously, their home racetrack ever since the ARCA Menard Series started racing at the Charlotte Motor Speedway several years ago, and that team's such a staple of the series, dating back to the 1980s, maybe even before that. Unofficially, I mean, we had Bill on the show earlier this year, and he's been around for the most part since day one. So pretty cool to have Junior's take on the state of the series and everything that has evolved in the ARCA Menard Series over the last 4 years since the merger with NASCAR. Kind of a very interesting conversation there.
Yeah, and just how key 2020 was to the the health of the ARCA Menard Series, ARCA East Series, and all that stuff. So really good stuff from Billy. Appreciate him coming on. Of course, 25th time ARCA will be at Charlotte this weekend on Friday night. Some other news and notes. Kyle, what are your just general thoughts about Wilkesboro? I mean, obviously the All-Star race and the truck race on the national side of things, but, you know, kicking things off on a Wednesday with a triple header between ASA All-Stars and then, of course, the Pro Late Model and Late Model Stocks with the Cars Tour. Of course, on the All-Star side, Bubba Pollard. I mean, it makes sense a legend like Bubba Pollard would win at Wilkesboro, but then on the Cars Tour side with Brendan Butterbean Queen, an emotional win for him there at Wilkesboro as well.
Yeah, and Augie Grill picking up the Pro Late Model win. I thought it was a great night, especially that first night. The crowd support was there. The front stretch was nearly full. The turns 1 and 2 grandstands were probably 60 to 65% full. I mean, there was space, but not a lot for a midweek Wednesday night triple header of racing out in the middle of Wilkes County. Loved it. Loved the whole weekend. I know, there's a lot of talk about the NASCAR All-Star race with minimal yellow, minimal passing. Kyle Larson kind of put a whooping to him, and you can blame the track, you can blame the car, the tires. My opinion is, the field was probably too small for the All-Star race. When you only have 22 cars on a 5/8 mile oval. We saw that years ago when the Cup ran there and they had minimal cautions then. I expected much of what we got on Saturday night with such a short field. You get the trucks out there with a full 36. You get the ASA, super late models out there with 40 and the Cars Tour fields with full 30+ car fields. And you get, a little more, there's more passing, there's more traffic, there's more opportunity to have action. And that's exactly what we saw in 3 events on Wednesday night and during the truck race on Saturday.
All in all, welcome sight to see Wilkesboro alive and well. And I'll be curious again, Kyle, and we'll follow this story too of kind of what the future looks like. Obviously, I think with what Wilkesboro's been through and what it looks like now, I would expect it to be on the schedule. It just depends on what it looks like and what kind of racing is, but we'll stay tuned to that. Speaking of Cars Tour real quick, want to mention Kenny Wallace. Yes, Kenny Wallace, America's favorite, is going to be at the Cars Tour race this weekend, Tri-County, at the Old North State Showdown. So another legend, or another NASCAR national legend from years past, going to climb back behind the wheel. What are your thoughts of that? I mean, he's been racing, right? But it's been primarily on dirt. So good to see him back on the asphalt.
Yeah, he's been in his IMCA modified for a long time. I mean, he'll run 30, 40, 50 races a year, predominantly in the Midwest. Those divisions, that division of cars, usually get 50, 60 for every event. So, and he is usually among them. He said on social media this week that he has been craving to go asphalt stock car racing once again, and found this perfect opportunity, and look forward to seeing how he does back behind the wheel on asphalt this coming weekend.
Absolutely. And our one of our guests from last year, Dylan Mamba Smith, NASCAR's chief hype officer. You typically see him doing driver intros and stuff on NASCAR Digital. Well, he's back behind the wheel as well in a pro late model there this weekend, Saturday on Flow. We did want to mention congratulations, Kyle, north of the border in Quebec. The Autodrome Granby is your official winner of the Advanced Auto Parts Advanced My Track Challenge. $50,000 to that racetrack. Speaking of Mamba, he was actually up there surprising the track GM Dominic Lessier with the 50 grand check and the announcement. And you could just tell how much that money means to a racetrack, no matter where it goes. But for that facility that was already amidst an update to its garages and desperately needed a better Musco lighting, think this money will be in good hands.
Absolutely. And you think about what we have been through as a world the last 3 years. Canada shut down a bit longer. I know it took a little bit more to get the public functions rolling again, into 2021 and even as early as last year in 2022. So, we're racing starved. A lot of great short tracks up there. The business definitely changed during that time, and I'm sure this money will go a long way in helping improve that facility and make up for some possible lost revenue over the last 3 years. But the good sign is short track racing alive and well back in Canada, back 100%. We saw that at Sunset, another great venue, and congratulations to those folks and picking up this money from NASCAR this week.
All right, so congratulations, Autodrome Granby. One other news and note on the late model side of things. How about Gavin Bochelle? We've talked about him a little bit. Primarily, he's been on the dirt as of late, running the Bell Kemenah development sprint car program for Christopher Bell and his father-in-law, and then, of course, running some midget stuff. And he's been at Millbridge and tested the waters a little bit in the late model. Well, he just signed a big deal this week with Rackley War in their late model program. A Team Chevy driver for Gavin. He's going to join the list of Connor Zilich and Carson Brown and Dawson Sutton as well in that late model program. Learning from a guy who knows a little bit too about winning on the short track side. That's Willie Allen, the 2007 Craftsman Truck Series Rookie of the Year, but also a former champion at the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Kyle, big opportunity for another young up-and-comer in Gavin Bochelle.
Yep, good opportunity. I've heard the name. In with a good group of people, like you mentioned, that know their way around not only the short track industry, but the motorsports industry as a whole. And, we talk about it all the time. It's all about the people that you surround yourself with. And he has put himself in good position and around good people.
But before we get to the calendar, last thing I wanted to touch on is the absolute chaos at Hickory Motor Speedway this past week. Again, yeah, we've now had two big drama-filled weekends in the short 4 weeks of the season, and again it involves Landon Huffman, but this time on the receiving end of just something that's unexcusable, right? Kyle is using her car as a weapon, and Annabeth Barnes-Crum frustrated after some on-track contact, which could have been reasoned as a racing deal. Again, I wasn't there to see it. I did watch the replay on Flow, but then, you retaliate on the racetrack, but unfortunately his father also attacked in the spotter stand. I mean, when is it, I don't even know what to say to that, but when is enough? I guess we put it this way.
No, I mean, and it's nothing overly new. I mean, we have seen Annabeth involved in incidents before. I think there's video of her fighting in the pits a few years ago. We've had her on the show many times. She's a friend of the show. I've known her for years. Jake, he's been on the show, but I feel like they have been involved in their fair share the last few years. Obviously, she was frustrated on Saturday night, destroyed her car, destroyed his car. It carried over into the stands, which is even more inexcusable. Obviously, I think the track should and I think will take action, which it is too bad because the car count at Hickory since week number 1 has diminished, and now there's a potential of losing another one or two cars because of what happened on Saturday night and possible suspension. So we'll see what happens, but it is inexcusable and something needs to be done, probably by the racetrack on the local side and maybe even by NASCAR, since it is a NASCAR sanctioned facility and was a NASCAR sanctioned event. But we'll see. Usually those type of situations are handled by the local track first, and I anticipate something coming down before they get on a racetrack next.
Safety, number one priority, and you don't want to see that. But again, we'll keep an eye on it. But definitely something that stood out over the weekend that a lot of people are still talking about what's going to happen, and certainly just another kind of black eye in a rough start to 2023 over there at Hickory Motor Speedway. All right, Kyle, quick look at the calendar. We talked about the biggest week in racing. It's probably one of the busiest as well on the short track side of things. Just a few of the many events going on. Of course, we mentioned the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour, Granite State Derby at Lee USA Speedway in New Hampshire, 7:45 p.m. start time on Flow Racing on Saturday. The ARCA Menard Series General Tire 150. You can listen to yours truly right here, co-host of Coast to Coast Beyond the Broadcast for MRN, 6 p.m. Friday from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Smart Modified Tour at Franklin County. USAC. Now, I know we don't talk a lot about open wheel, but two of the most iconic events in open wheel sprint car and Silver Crown history happen on the same weekend. It's the USAC Hoosier 100 for the Silver Crown, not on the dirt this year. It's actually going to be at IRP, where the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and ARCA Menard Series have competed at. That'll be on Friday night on Flow Racing. And the 75th Little 500, Kyle, I don't know if you ever watched it. It'll be on Flow on Saturday. 33 pavement sprint cars on a quarter-mile bullring paved oval is a sight to see, and it is so much fun to watch.
It is, and it takes a while sometimes. A lot of yellow, a lot of red. Cars come together. I think Bobby Santos III, I've watched him run that event several times and do well in that event. A great race. I've always wanted to go. I think they qualify like Indy as well, right? Isn't it like a 4-lap average type of qualification to get into that event? So a fun weekend everywhere in every region of the country, motorsports wise, especially in and around the Indianapolis region, of course, culminating with the 500 on Sunday, but some great USAC racing leading up to it on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, really good stuff. So, and a lot of our pavement specialists will be over there at Anderson on Saturday. And of course, Kyle, your neck of the woods, I know you're going to be missing it this week. Stafford back in action with their normal weekly program. Yeah.
Yeah, normal weekly program. The SK Light Modifieds. We had, I think, an average of 36 take the green flag over the first two races. They'll have a double the distance type of event or double distance event this week. A double down showdown. 40 laps will be run this Friday night, double from the 20 that they usually run. Some great racing here. The Monaco Modified Tri-Track Series. I'll be part of that broadcast as well on Sunday up in Barry, Vermont, Dave Moody's neck of the woods at the Thunder Road International Speed Bowl as they kick off their season. So racing everywhere this weekend. Every major sanctioning body seems like not only are they in action, but it's a major event on their calendar.
Just tell Bonza, since he's holding down the fort, not to burn the place down. You got to make sure it's still standing next week.
He's doing all of his notes for Friday night as we speak. He's a little nervous.
The guy never sleeps. Awesome stuff. Well, Kyle, safe travels, my friend. Can't wait to see you. Can't wait to get to cover the ARCA Menard Series and the Craftsman Truck Series Friday night from Charlotte. And then, unfortunately, while you go home, I'm driving to Indy because I'm not missing another Indy 500. I've been to now 16 or 17 since 2001, and I'm looking forward to being back for yet another edition of the greatest spectacle in racing. Should be a good time. All right, thanks so much to Billy Venturini for joining us here on the show, for our producer, Pat Jaggers, and Kyle Rickey. My name is Chris Wilner. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of NASCAR Coast to Coast presented by Whelen Engineering. On the road, in the air, and around the world, Whelen is trusted to be seen, trusted to be heard, and trusted to perform. Have a great week of racing, folks, a weekend, and we'll recap it all next time.